world. Oh, Anna, so nice to see you. How are you doing? Wonderful. Yeah. You're good enough to be here. You're good enough to be, well, good enough. That maybe has a lot of extra things to it, but you're here. You can see, you can hear, you making a choice to be together, to show up with all of us. So, has to be a decent place, right? Good enough. Good enough to heal, good enough to practice. Hello, Bobby. Nice to see you. Yeah. Deep bow. Everyone who shares their camera, they get a really deep bow. A lot of appreciation. So everyone who's over there on YouTube, in the YouTube world, make sure to say hello. We have Kanagawati and April, Island Mama, Missy, here on Discord, Simba, Solomon, hi Samantha, Omar, Nina, Noob, Craig, Eric and Britt, Anushka, Amanda. Anushka, is it 4 a.m. where you are? Wow. Oh, I can't hear you. So give me. I'm sorry, I can't hear. If anyone has said anything, I probably. All right, I can hear you now. Anna, what time is it where you are? 7 p.m. Okay. All right. Hello, Cassiana. Glad you're here.
Hello.
Nice to see you, Britt. And over on YouTube, Leva, Girl, Egg Boy, Michelle Walker, Julie, Gemma, John, Sonia. Sonia's joining on Discord or on YouTube today. So we're going to be missing out on, I'm going to be missing Sonia's cat. We have one user here who has a very special cat that's been bringing a lot of joy to our group meditations and our gatherings. So I think they're joining on YouTube today.
And today is International Cat Day. So
Oh, Sonia, please do whatever you can do to enjoy this day with your cat. Hi there, Bob on YouTube. Okay. So let's take a few moments to get settled in and get comfortable. We can find our heart, find our body, find a comfortable position for our gathering together. And start to become aware of our breathing. Start to listen rather than do anything. Listening to the experience of your body right now, the experience of your breath, and also finding your intention, finding your sincerity to be here. This is our Buddha Book Club, our gathering focused on healing trauma through the power of mindfulness. So the topic here is quite serious. or quite sincere, we can say. Better to say, quite sincere. So find in yourself, this intention. Do you really want to be here? Is this a topic that is important to you? Is this something you want to practice, something you want to know more about? Finding your sincerity and positive intention at this moment. Taking a deep breath, bring the mind along with that sincerity, along with that good intention, home to the body. And just for a few moments, checking in with the body, making sure that everything's okay. And if anything's not okay in the body, making sure that that not okayness, that pain, that difficulty has attention given to it. So even that pain or that uncomfortableness knows that it is seen, that it is attended to, that it is cared for at this moment. So, before we begin with our continued reading and looking at these teachings from Sister Dang Nghiem, who is in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, Plum Village tradition, I'm curious to know how everyone is finding the book so far. Have people been mainly uh, listening for the live sessions? Has anyone read ahead? Has anyone been working with the exercises that have been brought up? Um, how are we finding this text and this practice together? Maybe a few people can share.
I I found the book a little bit hard to process because it involves a lot of feelings and memories and things like that. So it's easier for me if I read along um, on my screen. And the exercises, sometimes I try to do it by myself, but there are some of those which are too hard for practice by myself right now. So, but I think it's helping little by little.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Anyone else? How are you finding it? How are you using it? How are you working with it?
I've noticed that the process of reading through this in a book has uh, made the material kind of feel a lot different for me because I've spent so much time reading and studying independently and on my own. Like I almost have this tendency to like dismiss what I'm reading and try to kind of downplay the value of it, and then being here in a group setting kind of like uh, it gives some more credibility, I think, like on a deeper level. So I'm not like, brushing all this stuff aside as I'm listening, because I hear you reading it and taking it seriously, and then everybody else is here taking it seriously, and it just gives it a whole different weight.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, we have maybe a few other people want to share, but we have a few comments about it over on YouTube. You can leave a comment if you like through text. You don't have to use your voice. Amanda Hensing says, I'm listening to the live sessions because I find your commentary and grounding meditations helpful. Okay. And Gemma says, I haven't read it, but I truly appreciate when you stop and discuss and when some of the Sangha shares. Great. How about you, Sam Hain, Suke? How are you finding this Buddha book club so far? Are you reading ahead?
I haven't been, but I've been really enjoying these. Oh, sorry if you heard that. My alarm needs a battery. I've really been enjoying these sessions. I'm hoping to, well, I don't want to get into too much detail, but like I'm going into an area where hopefully it'll be helpful.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Sam Hain, Suke. How about you, Britt?
This is my first one so far. I actually went back into some of the other Discord channels to see what other reading was suggested. So I started with some of the Buddha texts to refresh myself, but I wanted to attend this one, see how I feel about it before I go back and watch all the archived ones. So we'll see.
Right. That's a good answer. Let's all kind of see together how it goes today. All right, so we thank you everyone who shared. So we left off with our reading on Friday with this idea of deep listening, listening to the breath, listening to the body with our awareness, combined with the practice of loving speech. So meditation as deep listening together with loving speech towards ourselves as a way to create new mindful positive habits and to develop positivity and gratitude slowly but surely, to develop them as a habit, a kind of natural condition for our mind. And when we are in the situation when we do the opposite, or we just kind of let the mind run around, one thing is we waste a lot of energy, and the other is that we develop negative habits where we are rough on ourselves, or we find an excuse to be negative towards ourselves, and then that becomes a habit. So we left off with this topic of positivity and gratitude slowly becoming a habit. So we'll continue with the reading now. And it starts with Sister Dang Nghiem giving an account of her first years as a monk, as a nun. In my years as a novice nun, it was challenging for me to come back to the breath during sitting meditation. Morning or evening, I would sit down and fall asleep, nodding off before the bell master started the opening chant. I felt exhausted and feeble. While I was dozing, my mind went into dark and gloomy places, where indiscernible thoughts were lurking, muddled up in negative energy. Perhaps sleepiness was one of the ways my hypervigilant mind was trying to protect me from my own harmful thoughts. Unwittingly, it created a vicious cycle, since those murky thoughts begot further negativity and despair. Our thoughts are often like that as we go about our daily lives unaware. We may even believe it's normal to think all the time, when we're awake or even when we are sleeping. But it's not normal, in fact. Tay, which is Thich Nhat Hanh, Tay is this affectionate word for a teacher. Tay called it the non-stop radio of the mind. Indeed, it is life leakage, losing our life energy through every thought that is undetected and unrecognized. I'm not talking about creative thinking or exercising the intellect, but about unconscious self-talk, driven by stress, fear, and anxiety. These thoughts, in turn, can lead to more thoughts, speech, and bodily actions that are self-destructive and hurtful to ourselves and others. Habituated to continually thinking, we may not know or remember what peace of mind is like anymore. So it may be worthwhile to read this again. We may even believe it's normal to think all the time, when we are awake or even when we are sleeping. But it's not normal, in fact. Tay called it the non-stop radio of the mind. Indeed, it is life leakage, losing our life energy through every thought that is undetected and unrecognized. I'm not talking about creative thinking or exercising the intellect, but about unconscious self-talk, driven by stress, fear, and anxiety. These thoughts, in turn, can lead to more thoughts, speech, and bodily actions that are self-destructive and hurtful to ourselves and others. Habituated to continually thinking, we may not know or remember what peace of mind is like anymore. Another time, when I was seriously ill for 3 years with Lyme disease, I couldn't sit in meditation at all. However, I did my best to anchor my attention in my breath, so at least I did not get lost in a black hole of negative thoughts and sensations. Thanks to this practice of anchoring my mind in my breath, I saved my mind and, in fact, became more mindful of my breathing in daily life. Our subconscious mind has all the seeds. Our subconscious mind has all the seeds of different mental formations within it, both beneficial and harmful. The seeds to which we give attention grow and become strongly rooted, forming habits. That's why it is important to take care of our complexes and problems as soon as we become aware of them, while it is easiest to work with them. Anyone to share about this?
This is my first time reading along with this, but the fact that they could just focus on their breath when they had Lyme disease was pretty impressive, and how it translated to them focusing on their breath during everyday life. And that's something like I can pick up on as well.
Yeah, this is quite an important factor for um, meditating with sickness, meditating in the midst of difficulty, remembering the breath when it's inconvenient. Um, then in the future we can remember it all the more. Anyone else? Something stand out or something that inspired you?
The idea of the radio of the mind is very prevalent. Personally, having suffered from, some type of uh, insufficiency of being able to, pay attention, and constantly have that mental dialogue, and sometimes not really listening to what people say and just getting ready to say my part. Um, I definitely felt that in my soul. So it's very relatable.
About for people here, do you feel that you think all the time? Do you feel that you are constantly thinking? Or are there times or are there moments that are kind of free of thinking? Not so locked into relying on thoughts and thinking all the time. Curious about how people consider that, because I even felt for myself also that Sister Dang Nghiem, it's quite a strong thing to say that it's not normal to think all the time. And I think in her saying that is pointing to it as a complex that we've really gotten extremely involved with, but is totally not necessary. I think she wouldn't say normal in that way unless not thinking was at the foundation of our well-being and our life, like that not thinking was just totally natural, totally normal to not be stuck in thoughts or relying on thoughts.
I know for me personally, I even when I'm doing something I enjoy or my work that I'm fairly adept at, um, I still feel like I'm gonna do something to mess something up, or sometimes even when I have I work in childcare, and sometimes even when I have a full day planned, I'm still just thinking constantly about what if something goes wrong. And one of the reasons why I participate in the Sangha and do meditation is to realize that I keep remembering that I don't need to constantly think like that because it's unhealthy.
Anyone else like to share something before we continue?
Yeah, I want to share that that part stood out to me as well, because I feel like my brain is like a computer that has many tabs open, like a web page, Google Chrome, and I have like 20 tabs open, and I feel like I am the same way. I'm constantly thinking of all kinds of things, even about Christmas. Like, I am obsessing about Christmas. Last month in July, I saw some things online about Christmas in July, and I've been thinking so much about Christmas, and it's it's August. Like, why am I thinking about Christmas so much? So it's like it's always something, future plans, things I need to buy, things I need to plan for. What am I gonna recipes I want to make? I feel like the only time where I can be free from thinking so much is when I meditate. And even then, even in meditation, thoughts creep out or creep in.
I'd like to share that I love that she used the analogy of thoughts being like a weed in a garden because when they're very young, little sprouts, they're easy to just pluck away right out of your garden. And when you let them grow and you don't tend to it for a while, it's really hard to uproot it, and it can also multiply through the roots and create other branches and weeds, and it just starts to spread really quickly. And as a gardener, I've noticed that you have to tend to it almost every day to keep the weeds young and to keep plucking them when they're young. And it seems to me that it's very similar to meditation when you're new to it, when it's a fresh field, I guess, and you still have to learn how to regulate your thoughts. At least that's what it's been for me. And you can also plant like these cover crops in gardening that will mitigate weeds. And to me, that's like meta in the practices we learned in the previous readings would be like my analogy for the cover crop. So that's what I was thinking of at the end.
That's lovely. Thank you, Bree. How about Amanda? You want to share something?
I was just going to say, like, I really felt the truth behind how thoughts just build on top of each other, whether they be negative or positive. If you don't deal with them at the time, they do just build up and build up and build up, and ending up with a lot of suppressed stuff under so many thoughts.
Maybe what comes up for me is kind of developing a relationship or a familiarity with not relying on thoughts is definitely important to me. That state of not relying on thoughts can become more and more familiar. Not relying on the weeds in the garden to be in the garden. There's plenty of reasons to be in the garden that aren't thoughts or weeds or thinking. There's so many beautiful flowers of just to see, right? It's like our whole vision is full of beautiful flowers. So I got from that this developing a familiarity with not relying on thoughts to show up. And also the encouragement here about we have all the seeds within us for all kinds of different mental formations, good, bad, skillful, unskillful. And we have the seeds within us to just become a absolutely horrible person. I know I have those seeds within me 100%, to be a really horrible kind of person, doing bad, being unskillful, right? Harming myself, harming others. Those seeds are there within me. But I also have the seeds within me to become a wonderful, compassionate, kind, free person. So the seeds to which we give attention grow and become strongly rooted, forming habits. Like Bree said, you don't want these kinds of things to become an underground network of roots and tangles tangled into all your flowers and your fruits and all this. The weed kind of gets out into all that. So I think it's okay if that's the situation, but you have to stay on top of it. How do you do that? With the mindfulness, with a deep listening, and with loving speech. Not with any kind of harshness or force or judgment, something like that. Your awareness itself is kind of skillful, right? You as you're a kid, one time you put your hand on the stove, you never do it again. So there's a natural skillfulness in our awareness. Is just to be with that and to notice that in our lives moment by moment. What are we touching and what's the effect that brings us? And we're stubborn. We don't see it, even though we keep doing the same thing again and again and again. We expect a different result. It doesn't work. So come on, let's try to work with it, so that eventually we can be free from it. But fighting against it, planting or feeding these seeds of negativity, of judgment, of overthinking, this is just we're going to lose all of our energy. And then we're also feeding seeds. We're giving attention to seeds that are causing us more suffering, self-hate, aggression, depression. That's why it is important to take care of our complexes and problems as soon as we become aware of them, while it is easiest to work with them. 3 complexes. Due to our past experiences, we trauma survivors may encounter a major block to looking inward. We rarely experience enough psychological safety to stop and look into the content of our mind. While we may be able to function quite well in our daily lives, we may be in a chronic state of hypervigilant stress. The human mind constantly assigns value and classification to experience as part of its survival mechanism, aiming for safety as its crucial goal. As a result, we spend our lives looking outward in a state of vigilance to avoid being harmed or traumatized again. We think of ourselves as people to whom bad things will happen, and strive to keep a sense of separation from others to avoid being hurt. 3 powerful complexes arise together with the sense of a separate self. So this is important. Inferiority, superiority, and equality complexes. So three very powerful complexes arise together with the sense of a separate self. Inferiority, superiority, and equality complexes. We may find ourselves expending energy running between extremes of trying to prove our worth or beating ourselves up for our unworthiness. We may think, I'm better than you, or I am just as good as you, or gosh, I'm not as good, I'm not good enough. In so-called quote-unquote normal culture, in which competition is frequently valued over cooperation, our whole society joins in creating and reinforcing these complexes of superiority, inferiority, and equality. Even if we don't feel physically threatened in our bodies, we may transfer our sense of self to our achievements and possessions, and compare ourselves to others via our education, our jobs, the cars we drive, or the size of our homes or bank accounts. We constantly struggle with these complexes and assign value to our experience. We put ourselves up for auction, tormented with the question, how much am I worth? If we don't practice to identify these complexes in us, we may lose touch with our inherent sense of worth. Sadly, it doesn't matter how successful, how accomplished, how rich, how powerful, how senior in society we may become. We still act so insecure because we are trapped in this notion of a separate, defensive self. We are always trying to compete, to compare ourselves with others and try to outdo them. We may even be competitive about our trauma and our healing practices. We are always coming up with some scheme to protect ourselves, to protect the me and the my. The antidote to the three complexes is unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. Please follow the self-love practices in the previous chapter on 20 to 21, on pages 20 to 21. So those practices of offering self-love to ourself. May I be happy. May I be free from sufferings. Meditation is an invitation to let go of these complexes, to stop judging and comparing ourselves with others, and to lay down the armor of a separate self, so we can experience real safety and spaciousness of mind. Something I want to bring attention to here, I'm not sure if Sister Dang Nghiem will expound on this, but this idea of equality being a complex is that we're not in the same situation. We're not in the same position. And these complexes are kind of, it's a universal way of talking about the mind. So it also applies to, we think we want to be equal in access to resources. We want to be equal to someone else, but we cannot be equal to someone else because we are not someone else. We are not in the same position that they're in. We never could be. So it's actually, it's like a neutral form of superiority or inferiority. It doesn't justify any kind of exploitation or hierarchy necessarily, but we're not in the same position as someone else. We never can be. So if we're fighting for equality to be at the same position or the same level as someone else, that's not really possible because we aren't someone else. We have different conditions, we have different skills. It just relates to the mind itself. So I couldn't say too much about this, but it's something that's come up before in Thich Nhat Hanh's writings, Thay's teachings, and it's kind of shocking because for a lot of Western people, we want everyone to be equal, but everyone's not equal. You're tall, I'm short. We're in a different situation, all of us. Okay? We don't all need to be straight. We don't all need to be white. We don't all need to be black. We don't all need to be wealthy or poor. And we couldn't be because we're all it's an individuation as well. that we recognize the reality of the situation, that this is, this is my body, or this is the body that I'm mainly have to deal with, and it's not separate from any other bodies, but it's also this is the body that you know I'm responsible for right now, fully, completely. So the antidote to stop judging and comparing ourselves with others, and this way of laying down the armor of a separate self so that we can experience real safety and spaciousness of our mind, where we don't need to change and the world doesn't need to change and someone else doesn't need to change for us to be free and to be at peace, is unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. Unconditional self-love. Whoever you are, whatever you've done, whatever you're doing, unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. And there are some exercises for these self-love practices in the previous chapter on pages 20 and 21, if you have the book in front of you. Maybe, Bobby, you have the book in front of you, right? Maybe you could read out what those practices are if you see them, just so we can have that in our mind.
Even if you don't have difficulties with self-love, it never hurts to take a moment to practice loving kindness towards yourself. You do this anytime, at your workplace, in a car, go somewhere, or as part of your daily mindfulness practice. Put one hand on your throat and breathe. Put another hand on your heart or on your belly and embrace yourself. Breathe gently, feeling the touch of your warm hand on the skin of your throat for several in-breaths and out-breaths. Tell yourself, just breathe. It's okay. I love you. Repeat as many times as you like. If it's difficult or uncomfortable to say I love you to yourself at first, you can say, help me to love you. Help me take better care of you. Move your hands to your opposite elbows and give yourself a hug. Feel the touch of your palms on your elbows. Hug yourself a little tighter, then release. Do you feel the warmth and the life force in your own body? That's love right there.
Thank you so much, Bobby. So let's just ring a mindfulness bell. So that's something they really love to do in Sister Dang Nghem's tradition, in the Plum Village tradition, that they ring a lot more of a wonderful, kind of a regal bell than this one, but we can ring this one and then just take a few moments to sit and be mindful, be in the present, okay? And they say we invite the bell of mindfulness. And also you can, just like listening to the bell as the sound of the Buddha's voice. Okay, so let's continue. Perceptions and our state of mind. The body is the most concrete form of ourselves that we can be aware of. Okay? The body is the most concrete form of ourselves that we can be aware of. Then we have the mind that manifests our feelings, which can be pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or mixed. We also have mental formations or states of mind, which include perceptions about each other and ourselves. While these perceptions can determine our happiness and our suffering, we actually know very little about them. My teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, has said that 99% of our perceptions are incorrect. Can you imagine that? It'd be a strange world. Thich Nhat Hanh has said that 99% of our perceptions are incorrect. I think that's why this question of, what's going on here? What's happening here is so inspiring and curious, because we just have our perceptions that we know about, but really our perception couldn't get to the truth, the depth of this moment, right? So it's a really interesting experience. The Chinese character for perception, or to perceive, is this Chinese character. I don't think I can't show it really, but it's a Chinese character. And the reason that you will hear in this book about the Chinese character for this or that, or the Chinese word for this or that, is because Vietnamese Buddhism has come from China. So a lot of the original Buddhist texts that are used in the Zen tradition, or the Buddhist tradition that Sister Dang Nghiem comes from, are originally maintained in Chinese. So the Chinese character for perception, or to perceive, is what it is. The upper half of the character is composed of the root characters for tree and eye, which together represent sign or appearance. The eye sees the tree, and it recognizes it. The lower half is the root character for mind or heart. When sign and mind come in contact, perception arises. So when an appearance and the mind come in contact, a perception arises. This character, to perceive, when used in conjunction with other characters in different contexts, meaning the Chinese character, the symbol, this character, to perceive, when used in conjunction with other characters in different contexts, can also mean to assume, to imagine, to anticipate, to project into the future, or to reminisce. Thus, the composition of the character tells us that it's the state of mind and its previous experiences that determine what a person actually, quote unquote, sees. For example, the sign may be a tree. But when the mind is involved, the perception may become, that's a beautiful tree, or even that's a dangerous tree, or even that is a CIA operated tree, right? If, for example, the person had been struck by a similar falling tree before, and these perceptions, can really get out of hand. The Chinese character reflects that there is not one fixed reality and helps explain why it is important to understand our mind. The mind determines how we may view ourselves and the world in a distorted way, especially because of past trauma and negative experiences. I always find that that's a kind of advice, or that's a kind of teaching or direction I like to point people towards when they are really getting stuck in a real true story about themselves or about the world. This girl broke up with them, and now the girl's doing this and doing that, or and now I'm not with them, and it happened because of this, and that happened, and it went together. And so these people are just so, sometimes just so worked up in this real, true story of what happened. But if we can kind of lean back a little bit from our head being in the water like this, in the waterfall, we can see that it's not this real true story. It's not so fixed. It's not so permanent, but that it's a changing thing. And our perception, our story about it, our idea about it isn't, sure, it's difficult. Maybe it's similar to what you think, but it's not that. It's especially not that. It's just your perception. There is not one fixed reality. And if there was, you wouldn't have the key to that, to know about that. You have two eyes, not 1 billion eyes. So, there's not one fixed reality. The mind determines how we may view ourselves and the world in a distorted way, especially because of past trauma and negative experiences. We find the way out of suffering and ill-being by looking deeply into the working of our mind and how it may view our 5 skandhas of body, feelings, mental formations, perceptions, and consciousness. When we have a clear understanding about who we are, we learn to take care of ourselves appropriately in each present moment where life truly exists. Moreover, we can train our mind to be in a state of spaciousness, calm, and positive, so as to perceive the situation with more clarity, equanimity, and a sense of possibility. Practice. You think so? Upon my request, Tay once wrote me a calligraphy that said, "You think so?" Question mark. Asking this question is a great practice to check in with our perceptions. It helps us re-examine our deeply ingrained views and perceptions so that we may discover ourselves from different angles and at deeper levels. In my spiritual life, I have found myself having to yield and release layer after layer of views, perceptions, and attitudes that I once thought were solid and immovable. Letting go of fixed opinions has allowed me to accept myself and be accepted by others, to experience joy and to be okay with it, and not cling to my suffering. Practicing self-inquiry, so inquiring inward, turning inward. Practicing self-inquiry with the question, "You think so?" has taught me so much about how I think about my suffering. Quote, "It's mine. You don't understand it. My pain is greater than your pain." Unquote. It takes a lot of courage to release and let go of our negativity. Let's try this practice. For example, say you have a negative thought toward yourself, such as, "That's awful," or "That was really dumb what I said." Breathe, smile, and ask yourself, "You think so?" Continue to breathe, smile, and listen for a while. Has anything changed? You think so? Anyone have something they'd like to share about what we read today? Anything that stands out or has impacted you, inspired you?
I'd like to share something.
Yeah.
I've studied criminology, and during one of my papers, uh, I was specifically studying victim behavior. And when I was studying up on it, an interesting finding was that people who have experienced particularly sexual trauma tend to be, I don't remember the exact figure, but it was, I think, definitely above 50%. They're more likely to experience other trauma in the future. And that was an interesting finding because one of the theories as to why that could be so is that not consciously people that have undergone such trauma tend to put themselves in such situations again, so they hope that they would do something differently and not face a similar outcome or something like that. But I feel like when we look at trauma or any situation with mindfulness and just how we pluck the weeds when they are still fresh and young, we don't let ourselves, we don't let our minds take us to more dangerous situations because it's something that happens a lot. And we really, it's not something like, obviously, I don't want to sound insensitive. It's definitely not something that is easy to do, but it could save us some future trouble when we look at it this way, when we look at what we've experienced with care, love, and just sit with it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, girl over in, one sec, Amanda. Girl on YouTube said, "Has anything changed?" This question, "Has anything changed?" as that kind of self-inquiry phrase or technique practice feels important, and I need to think about that more. Thank you, girl. Go ahead, Amanda.
Just for that last part, I actually feel like I had a bit of an experience of that this weekend where I was invited to a quiz night show, and my first thought was, I'm not smart enough to be going to one of those quiz nights. And I did do that. I said, do you really think so? And after a moment, I actually thought to myself, I do have a lot of knowledge inside of me. And I went to the question. So, yes, asking yourself, do you really think that really helped?
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. Missy over on YouTube says it's hard to hear these teachings because they are so simple, and pursuing a doctorate and writing a dissertation are just an exercise in overcomplicating a very overly complex failure. Interesting. And Free Conscious says sometimes ambition is not as great as we think. Girl also says, I love that for you, Amanda. So, yeah. Anyone else? Some wisdom that you've gotten from what we read today?
I just wanted to add that I also think I'm going to get a lot of value out of asking myself that question, you think so? Because it helps to remind me that a lot of the negative self-chatter that I sort of generate all the time and have internalized from past experiences is just thoughts, and it's not reality. And asking myself, you think so, in sort of that questioning way leads me to probe into it and see that it's just a thought. And I think that'll be helpful, especially with overcoming challenges in my near future. So thank you for that.
Cassandra, you want to share anything you have gotten from this, our part 5 of Buddha Book Club?
I'll say I've already bought it on the Kindle. So I guess that means I'm going to be catching up so I can follow as we go forward.
I've also got it on the Kindle Brit. So, yeah, we're not that far into the reading. You know, it shouldn't take you too long to catch up. And you're also welcome to watch back our previous parts that we've had together. For most of these teachings as well, though, it's a one-stop shop. If you're here for 5 minutes, you can get something that you might not find for your whole life, looking elsewhere. In these teachings, Sister Dang Nghiem is a really beautiful teacher, and she's had a lot of past experiences that she's been very, very successful in transforming, and that's something that brings a lot of value to all of us, because a lot of people have traumas and deep sufferings in their life up until now, but there's not many people who embody or represent that success of healing, or even the possibility of healing that, and kind of speak directly to that, outside of maybe, I was a poor person and now I'm a wealthy person, or I was an addict and now I'm not an addict, but really kind of going down and fully healing those traumas, those sufferings, those difficulties in a fundamental way, And Sister Dang Nghiem, she really represents that in a wonderful way. So let's unless anyone else has something they want to share, we'll just finish today's session with a somewhat pitiful ring of the mindfulness bell, and we'll sit together for a few moments, and then we can make 3 sadhus together. We can chant together at the end. Eric, you want to share something?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I guess one thing that I really took from this reading was the feel we have a personal responsibility to water good seeds. Because I know when I was in a darker time and I was in a pretty hostile environment, I would water seeds of hatred. I would water seeds of judgment, and it would get bigger every day, and it would not stop until I got out of that environment and I started watering different seeds. And I think a big part of that is the amount of water that you add. I mean, the consistency of watering the plants every day for compassion and self-love. It takes time, and like over time, I'm pulling out of that place, and it feels like I'm understanding more of the responsibility of watering those seeds. So that's what I got. Thank you very much for listening.
So this is like my first time joining one of these book readings, and even though I haven't even read the book or seen the cover or anything, like everything that you read, I think everyone else can relate to. It was like an attack on me. Everything just related to me, just how I have to constantly be thinking. And I kind of see it reflect in my circle of friends and people I know. It's like people don't really talk about self love, and just sitting there like hugging myself and like just focusing myself on breathing and saying I love you to myself. It was weird because I don't do it, and it felt good. So
Just knowing about the efficacy, the legitimacy, the empowerment, the necessity of self-love, self-care, compassion, gentleness, stepping in and saying, hey, I love you. When we start to shame ourselves, to beat up on ourselves, to, this nonstop negative thinking of, I hate you, I don't like you, I don't like the way you are, you messed up, you're not smart, you're not good. To step in and say, no, I love you. And it's so wonderful that we can all have this opportunity, just even if it's just for this moment, even if it's just one time to water this seed and to give attention to this. Who knows what the fruits of that can be? And the more that we do water that, as imperfectly as we are, I love how you said, Eric, that it was like an attack. I also had that kind of feeling, like it goes to the core of how we try to protect ourselves. I try to separate myself from the world, from other people, superior, inferior, or even equal. I'm equal to that person. Well, you're not equal because you're not that person, but you're also not superior, and you're also not below that person, right? So how do we interact? Well, we interact from this place of unconditional self-love, radical acceptance, sincere acceptance of this moment and this body and this heart and this mind and the people who are around us. It's nature, right? It's the truth. So you don't need to think your way through it. You don't need to fight your way through it. You need to stop fighting and practice this real deep love and this real acceptance, and be patient. I've been finding myself recently, I get into some kind of conflict or I get into some kind of friction, and then at that moment I'm believing in the friction. I'm stuck in the friction. And then of course it goes away, or it doesn't go away so quickly. But in the midst of all that, there's this space for radical self-love, radical acceptance. And then before you know it, that fruit just comes to bear, of watering that seed of, okay, I'm in the midst of friction. I'm not the best. I'm not the right one, not the perfect one. Radical self-love, full self-love, and sincere acceptance of this moment, this breath, this body, and touching that, being with that as a constant door to freedom. And somehow it seems like that pushes out this really subtle way of affecting my life and the people in my life, that isn't stuck in the friction. It frees from that friction, even in the midst of it, I find. So I'm going to ring this bell 3 times, and then we'll just a few moments to be with our body and our mindfulness and our breath together, and then we can chant sadhu together and offer out and share out our acceptance and anything that we've gotten from this practice, to offer out and share out. We can all bring our hands together and can take a deep breath. We'll chant sadhu together 3 times. And we can take a bow. So before everyone goes away, I do have a humble request. We are having a website to be made. Someone who is, offer that support and helping to organize it is making a website. And there is a survey that we're having some of the helpers and the supporters here, they set up, specifically how, I believe, set up. And I'm putting in the announcements channel that survey that you can take. It's like a Google form or something. and is, I believe, a questionnaire so that you can give maybe what you're looking for in a monk life community website. Definitely an intention that we have here is to keep inviting people to join us and find more ways for us to use what we have here to benefit others and kind of flesh out and establish this space to benefit, of course, ourselves, but others more and more. So if you can fill out that survey, it's a good helping place to start. Okay, there's a link in the announcements. All right, thank you all for being here. Be happy, enjoy. And the YouTubers, you can leave a like. Don't forget to leave a like. Goodbye, everyone.